Welcome back to the Sully Scoop, where three lifelong Husker bros dive in depth on all surrounding the new era of Husker football, where our cups never run dry of the Roulade under head coach Matt Rule. Made by fans for fans with JSul, BSul, and TSul.
Welcome back to your favorite Nebraska Cornhusker podcast. It's the Sully Scoop. This week you're here with BSul TSul and special guest Chazzy. We are going to take another dive into the Husker schedule for 2024 and get Chazzy's predictions for the Huskers this year. But first, welcome back on, Chazzy. Always a pleasure to have you.
Yeah, always a pleasure to be welcomed on this podcast. Always a blast, especially this year, because you guys know that Kool-Aid is overflowing.
Welcome back, Chazzy. We're very happy to have you. And finally, we got rid of that JSul character. I mean, we've just been dying to have an episode without that guy. And here it is. Here it is, scoopers. So, take it in as much as you can because it's not going to last forever.
Just remember, there is a disclaimer on this episode. Without JSul being here, the roulade is flowing and it's probably overfilled in all of our cups. So take it with a grain of salt, but you're in for a good one.
Well, I think we start this episode off before we hear Chazzy's predictions. Let's dive into how wrong he was last season. What do you say there, BSul?
I think that's a definitely fun one here, TSul, to take another look here at Chazzy's predictions from last year. He did have the Huskers in the preseason going 8-4 last year.
Not bad when you consider some of the other people on this panel there, BSul.
Yeah, I know. Good old Beachnight had us 11-1 last year.
Chazzy, what do you have to say for yourself?
You know what? I think 8-4 was a fair estimate last season, because I can't speak on what this season's going to be just yet. But only being 3 games shy, and we know how some of those games shook out last year, I think 8-4 was right on the money.
Totally agree with you, Chazzy. I mean,
especially when you start 5-2.
Bingo. And when you really dive into it last year and how they collapsed in the second half of the season, I mean, this team should have ended with more than 8 wins.
Absolutely, they should have had more than 8 wins here. Now, I think we all can agree on that, except for JSul. He had a 6-6 last year, and the other fun part is he's got a 6-6 again this year. JSul is just holding out for bowl eligibility here, and let's be real. I'm assuming Chazzy has the same feeling that you and I both do, TSul, that we are going to be bowl eligible before we even get to Ohio State.
I mean, Chazzy, we like to jump on a lot of bandwagons, especially when we're on the scoop. And we don't shy away from that. And I'm even going to make a bold statement. We're going to be bowl eligible before we even lose a game this season.
I love to hear it there, Chazzy. Love to hear it. I believe me and BSul picked it the same way.
You're darn right we did. And TSul, just because we were picking on Chazzy for picking the team to go 8-4, let's just admire the fact that he did pick all of the losses correct, except for, so when he picked the program here, he only got 3 games wrong during the season. That was Iowa, Maryland, and Colorado. The rest of them, he picked the outcome correct there. So got to give him a little credit there. The only person with the same amount of incorrect games picked was JSul. So you're in decent company there, Chazzy.
I was really looking forward to that awesome compliment there until you had to bring in JSul being that good as me. But, he's not here to defend himself. So I'm all on it because I definitely picked a good week to come on the podcast when I don't have to sit here and beef up with JSul for 40 minutes of my life. So I definitely think that my predictions being that close with our losses, because last year, as much as I want to say let's forget about last year, I think it's a building block for this year.
It absolutely is. I think everybody who has watched the Huskers over the last couple of years, anybody who knows anything about Matt Rule, typically people say year 3, Matt Rule produces. I bought in year 1. I was ready for him to produce year 1 because, again, in Nebraska, we grade on championships, whether it's appearances or, well, technically we grade on wins. But listen, I want you in the championship game. I thought last year was a great opportunity. We were in it up until the end when we went on that 3-game skid to end the year. But let's face it, guys, year 2 this year for Matt Rule is going to be huge. We've got a quarterback who can actually throw the ball, complete passes, and should be able to understand the offense, having been in there since spring ball.
And Chazzy, I want to get your thoughts. I gave JSul a hard time about it last week, rightfully so, because I just don't believe him. He's picking the Huskers to go 6-6 like he did last year. And if you recall, last year he was calling for Matt Rule to be fired the entire season because he was pissed off we kept losing. So how is he going to be happy with a 6-6 outcome? I think in all reality, if the Huskers play to what JSul predicted of 6-6, he's calling for everybody's heads.
Well, TSul, I think this might be the easiest decision to ever jump behind. But yeah, I don't think I could agree with you any harder that if he's, you know what, I think his train has already derailed and the season hasn't even started. That the fact that he's already given us a 6-6 season, after Matt Rule's first loss last year, he was calling for him to be head chopped. He wanted his head after the first loss, and you know what? I think I'm questioning his fans to Nebraska. I don't even think he likes us anymore.
Yeah, I'm totally with you there. I don't think that there's any way that the team goes 6-6 and he turns around with a smile.
You know what?
I just don't see it.
Him telling us that we're going 6-6 this year is just like Trev Albert's leaving the program. Get him out of here.
Couldn't agree more. Don't let the door hit you on the way out.
Exactly.
Now, I do have to ask you, Chazzy, here, as we look at the beginning of the schedule here, let's dive right into it. Do you think this will be the first time in what are we at? 5 years, 6 years that the Huskers are going to open the season with a win?
Yeah, that sounds
5 years
about right.
since the last time we did that.
Yeah, whatever it is, it's been way too long. And, you know, I don't care about the haters saying, oh, we got a freshman quarterback. Oh, we got this, we got that. We're playing at home and we're playing UTEP. And I know we've played a lot of teams and I've had the same sounding voice coming out of my mouth that makes it sound like, oh, we're opening the season with this team. Cakewalk. No, this might be the first year that we're getting cake before the game even starts.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. UTEP is an inferior program there. The Huskers should just, as TSul likes to call it, they should just steamroll them here. It shouldn't even be close. Shouldn't be a game.
Yeah, I mean, right now they got the over-under, or not the over-under. They got us favored by 27.5, and I think that's being pretty lenient. We should beat those guys by more than 4 touchdowns.
I would agree. I also think they're playing big on, Raiola being his first college football game. And we know how young quarterbacks can or cannot be in their first game. They're bound to make some mistakes, but I think with the hard-nosed hitting defense that we have, even if let's say we turn the ball over, the defense is just going to get it right back. So
Totally
I don't
agree.
see any problems there.
Yeah. But then we jump to the next week. I mean, we're not skipping a beat here. We're jumping. Colorado's coming into town. Night game. What do you think, Chazzy?
You know what? I don't even care what his nickname is anymore. Deion Sanders and the stinking hype train of Colorado caught us last year. And by darn it, if it happens again this year, which is not going to happen, I'm just going to state that right now. It's not going to happen. It's not in my mind that it's happening. but I'm tired of Neon Dion or whatever his stupid name is and his kids. Because at this point, I don't care about any of them. They could showboat all they want, but they ain't going to be showboating a lot when they come to Lincoln.
Same way we
I
picked it.
couldn't agree more with you. Listen, I think, like you said, I think last year we went into a hostile environment. First time Nebraska and Colorado had played each other since the Adrian Martinez freshman injury. So I think it was kind of a perfect storm for Colorado. They had a new coach, they had a new quarterback. Everybody bought into Dion. He was riding a high after they beat TCU, who was in the championship game the year before. I think it was just kind of a perfect storm. They went on to basically lose every other game after us. I mean, that Colorado team is still terrible. They're still trash. And I think you are going to see the difference in how to build a program this year. That you're going to see Dion and his flashy players get blown out from this Nebraska team that's being homegrown.
Yeah, I don't see this game being close at all. I mean, I expect it. I don't even see it being close at halftime. I mean, I'll be straightforward. I think the only time it's going to be close is during opening kickoff. We're going to blow past these guys. It's not going to be anything to think about. What happened last year was we're talking about it was our first road game of the season, our second game of the season.
We gave them the ball 5 times on their side of the field in the first half.
Well, exactly. We turned it over a ridiculous amount. I mean, we were still starting Jeff Sims for some, God knows reason at that point. And our defense hadn't caught fire yet. Our defense was starting to see, a little bit here and there of the potential and what they could do, but they hadn't caught fire yet to the point where we were one of the top 5 defenses in the Big Ten. At that point, we were still questionable. They were still making, freshman mistakes, learning the system, whatever. If we had played Colorado at the end of the season last year, it would have been a different game. And I expect that to just bulldoze into this year.
Yeah, I mean, you guys said it. I truly think last year, like I said, you got the back and forth big rivalry game, right, from back in the day. You had some injuries, some mistakes, I mean, more mistakes than injuries, to be honest. But it, second game of the year, first road game. We know how college football is. Any team goes on the road. It doesn't matter if you're playing a top 25 or if you're playing the worst team in college football. You're going on the road. Anything can happen.
Anything can
that's
happen.
that's exactly it.
And
Anytime you're
turnovers
away from your home field, it's a risk.
So Chazzy's got that as a big win. And then we jump to the next game. We got Northern Iowa coming into town.
Well, you see here, when I was in school, only a few years ago, it feels like, but I know it's longer than that by now. But I've never even thought twice about Northern Iowa. The coolest part about them is they play in a dome. And to be honest, I hate their colors. It's purple. Can't stand the color purple. And that just makes me hate them more because I hate Northwestern.
Yeah, I'll mark that as a W here on Chazzy's predictions because we knew that going in. Listen, the best thing about Northern Iowa is the fact that they have a couple decent players that will transfer out after a year of playing there and make an impact. Shout out Chris Korlovic. But the Huskers should take care of business there when Northern Iowa comes to town. The next game, Chazzy, first Big Ten game of the season. Illinois comes to town, comes to Lincoln. The question is, who are you riding with? The 2 guys you're on the panel with a cup full of Roulade, or the guy who had to sink away from his sorrows after picking a 6-6 year?
Well, you guys know where my heart lies, and I hate watching us lose to Illinois, and that has happened a lot lately, and we've been at a lot of those losses. And you know what? I'm tired of staring at Bielema looking up at that scoreboard, just walking off the field going, dub. So this year, we're rewriting all of the past few years' wrongs, and we're just going to take the ball away from their offense, which is the best way to take that game from Illinois, is keep their offense off the field. because we know how that goes. They're going to run the clock down just like every other running team in the Big Ten.
Completely there with you, Chazzy. I'm tired of losing to this freaking Illini team that they're not a football program, and when they beat you, it's embarrassing. And especially when they beat Nebraska, they're not dumping the kind of money that we're dumping in, so it's embarrassing every time we lose to them. And I think the Illini have sniffed their last win against Nebraska for at least the next 10 to 15 years. I think we're not going to skip a beat against these guys. We beat them last year, and last year we're going to be a shell of what we are this year. I think Illinois is getting worse.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way, TSul. So Chazzy, you got us 4-0. You got us going on the road. And I got to ask you a question here before our first road game in the Big Ten this year. First road game of the season. How do you feel about the Huskers going to the Purdue Boilermakers, visiting West Lafayette? And I got to ask you something. I'm just going to put the statement back out there. How do you think we're going to fare against a team that's going to have the least amount of wins in the Big Ten?
Well,
Do you
BSul,
agree with that statement?
I've taken your back multiple times since this podcast has been around. And you know what? My water might be boiling over, but I ain't stopping now. And we're getting on BSul's bandwagon because they are definitely going to be the worst team in the Big Ten this year. Unless they tie with Minnesota. That would be my one uproar that they wouldn't be the worst team, is that they tie. So I'm going to tie or worse. But you know what? Boil this. They could be the sea of red come that week, because I think as we travel the best in the Big Ten. Everyone knows it. It's going to be a sea of red at that stadium.
And let me ask you this, Chazzy. You said you got Purdue potentially tied with Minnesota at the bottom. BSul's got Purdue as the worst team in the league. I believe I picked Minnesota as the worst team in the league. Do you see PJ Fleck getting fired this year? I'm calling it again. I'm shocked that the guy still has a job. And I'm pretty sure everyone in Minneapolis is going to be pissed off this season. The fact that he's still at the helm when they start dropping games like flies at the beginning of the season.
Now, Chazzy, before you answer this, I'm going to put it out here, TSul. I need to give a little bit of some clarity here to everybody, because it really does feel like a personal attack on PJ Fleck's job from you here. And I think this all stems back to season 1 of the Scoop, when TSul picked Minnesota to win the Big Ten. They were the self-proclaimed Big Ten champs, picked by TSul. And Double D will never forget it. He continues to call TSul out and calls Minnesota his self-proclaimed Big Ten champs. And TSul, is that why you are so fed up with PJ Fleck? Is that you bought in and he's underperformed for 4 years since then, and you're still just done with him now? Did he break your heart? Is it personal?
BSul, that's exactly where it comes from. Because let me tell you this. Minnesota was building things before he got there. Jerry Kill put it all together, and I don't remember who his predecessor was for a couple of years, but they fired that guy for no reason. And now they're stuck with this guy who inherited a program that was on the ups, a program who hasn't been on the ups since the 1950s, okay? They start making waves. All of a sudden, now we were talking, it's COVID time. You got a quarterback who's been in your program for, I don't know, 20 years. You had one of the best running backs in the conference, and you couldn't even win the West. Everyone in the West was a laughing stock. I think that season we had Purdue come out in the West. So that's how much of a joke it was. And at Minnesota, you were there. That was like your 5th season. You should have been rolling on all cylinders, and you couldn't even get past Purdue.
Now, TSul, I will let you know that Jerry Kill was not let go from Minnesota. He stepped down due to health reasons.
Who was the guy who took over for him? The big bald guy.
I think Jerry Kill was.
No. Jerry Kill was the old dude.
I will pull up the Minnesota coaches for you.
Talk about something else. I'll look it up for you.
So, back to you, Chazzy. Do you think that PJ Fleck is fired at the end of the season like TSul?
Or
Well,
midseason.
before I give any prediction on how I think his job is gonna be secured or not be secured, let's just circle back real quick and let's give a big shout out to Double D, because anytime anyone else is on this podcast or not on this podcast, but is shooting and giving them some business to TSul or JSul, I'm normally on board with that. So I'm shouting out Double D because I'm right up there. I don't like to really talk about people losing their jobs, and I think putting that blast on PJ Fleck right now, it I can't even imagine it. I mean, we went from a guy giving out sprinkles, and we got dealt with him all those years, and he didn't get fired right away. So you're going off 2 rough seasons for PJ Fleck, and you're going, can this man? I don't think so. I think if he gets fired from Minnesota, it's going to be not because of how well their team did. It's going to be because of something else stupid.
If they let him go, Matt, or Chazzy, I will tell you, it feels a lot like, and again, I'm comparing apples to oranges here because Minnesota holds themselves to a different standard than Nebraska does, which is why they are okay with mediocrity. But if you compare this here, it would be firing PJ Fleck would be like letting Bo Pelini go. You're going to basically tell people that the best coach you've had in years wasn't good enough. So how are they going to come in and replace it? You're going to end up going through a Mike Riley type deal. And TSul, to shoulder the load here and just get you to it, Jerry Kill was the coach who stepped down due to health reasons. The guy who took over for him was Tracy Claeys,
And they should have never fired
coached
that
for
man.
2 years. Okay, Tracy
never
Claeys
fired him.
for taking over Jerry Kill halfway through the year went 11-8 in a season and a half.
And when was the last time when was the last time before him that Minnesota had a coach with a winning record?
That would
Jerry
be back
Kill
in
was
97 to 06. But TSul, what you're forgetting is, let's just be real. Since then, Tracy Claeys went 11-8. PJ Fleck is 50-34 at Minnesota.
Now, BSul, this is exactly what I was talking about. This is exactly why PJ Fleck needs to get fired, because he inherited a team with a coach who had Minnesota with a winning record. So why then does he have the same winning percentage as the guy before him? And last season he went 5-7. So
that is
no,
he's got a better winning percentage. He's
No,
at 595. He's at 595.
He inherited a team on the ups, and they plateaued, and now they're going back down. He didn't find that peak. There was no peak for Minnesota. And if they kept that Tracy guy, he had everything that Jerry Kill was doing. He ran it the way that Jerry Kill did. He would have been a better decision. And everyone in Minnesota probably agrees with me at this point. I mean, when you look at it, he came in and went 5-7. PJ Fleck, that is, went 5-7 in 2017. He went 7-6 in 2018. 2019, he went 11-2. And you're telling me right here, he went 11-2 in 2019. You couldn't build off that. And you're saying 3 years later, you're now going 5-7 again? What the hell?
Now,
Nick
TSul,
Santa would never
hold
be
on.
going 5-7.
In the 7 years that PJ Fleck has been there, he's been to 5 bowl games. He's 5-0. You're really going to drag his name through the dirt? He's getting bowl wins. He's keeping them alive, getting them to the postseason. Minnesota's not built on championships.
I'm going to put it in the words of Saban. What's a bowl game? When we got the playoffs, why am I wasting time at a bowl game?
So let's go back, TSul, because you were in love with Jerry Kill.
You were in love with Jerry Kill.
Jerry Kill went 0-3 in bowl games. 0-3 in bowl games. Jerry Kill.
He was the one who started building the program. If you recall there, BSul, Minnesota was like a team who got 2 wins on a season if they were lucky. And yes, they were playing those teams like Northern Iowa and UTEP.
Built them up to not win a bowl game.
I'm just saying.
Yep.
So, BSul, is PJ Fleck going in your coaching Hall of Fame then? Are you just electing him in there now?
We'll see how long he lasts. He's basically, here's a comparison for you, TSul. PJ Fleck is very similar to Kirk Ferentz, and I believe that Minnesota has their Kirk Ferentz, and they are happy with it.
Well, if I'm in Minnesota and somebody just related my coach to Kirk Ferentz, I'm kicking him out the door tomorrow. I don't want Kirk Ferentz. What the hell has that guy done in Iowa? The last I heard, recruits are still walking away from Iowa. They can't even land the top recruits in the state.
I mean, at this point, I'm going to just not even chime in that much on this tangent that TSul's been on. But can we just circle back to your, okay, he had his program built for him? I don't even remember because it's been so long since Bo Pelini was even here. But that man at least had his bowl eligible at 8-4. What happened the first season that they got rid of him and we brought in our next coach? Because I don't think it was that good if I remember any of our coaching staff after Bo Pelini. So what do you tell me that just said, we went 8-4 and then all of a sudden we win like 3 games?
Yeah, you're exactly there, right, Chazzy. And Minnesota, you do watch Nebraska do that, and you do think like, well, we don't want to be those guys. And so I get that aspect of it if that's where you're sitting at. But then you can't complain when you're never going to compete for anything at that point.
Well, good news for us. That's exactly what Minnesota's doing, and I like that for them.
So long story short, Chazzy, do you think PJ Fleck will get fired this season, either during or after the season?
No, I think he'll be at Minnesota unless something non-game related happens.
Now, Chazzy, do you think he will be at Minnesota for, I don't know, let's call it 25 years?
No.
He's on his way. He's at 7.
25 is a long way from the heart if he's only at 7.
You know, I threw out 25. This is Kurt Ferentz's 25th year. I was just trying to draw a comparison here. And I got to tell you guys, if you go back and look at Ferentz's first 4 years there, he didn't have a winning record until year 3, and he won the Alamo Bowl. Then in year 4, he lost the Orange Bowl. TSul, I would argue that PJ Fleck's a better coach than Kirk Ferentz.
Here we go. Here we go with the shenanigans. It's Iowa. We're comparing Iowa and Minnesota, 2 teams we don't even want to be like. Why are we comparing ourselves to Iowa and Minnesota? The only good comparison we have to Iowa is that our defense is trying to be what Iowa's defense has been.
Now, Chazzy, hold on a second. I'm not comparing Nebraska to either one of those programs. I'm saying that you could draw comparisons from Minnesota to Iowa. Nebraska is a different caliber program here than both of them. I'm just saying that little brother Minnesota wants to be like big brother Iowa, that they hired their own version of Kirk Ferentz and PJ Fleck, and as to much of TSul's distaste here, PJ Fleck isn't going anywhere. He will be a Minnesota Golden Gopher for the next 20 years, and you're just going to have to deal with it. You're going to go through a whole nother wave of this, TSul. You're going to get PJ Fleck's son Brian is going to come coach for Minnesota, and he's going to run that offense terribly for 7 years. And then people are going to say, "Hey, PJ, I think we're going to have to let you go." And he's going to be like, "Listen, I'm going to fire my son. Give me another 10."
BSul, I can't wait for you to be wrong. I mean, who does it impress when you say, "Hey, our coach, he might actually be better than Kirk Ferentz"? I don't think anybody's impressed with that statement. I don't think anybody should be impressed with that statement. My thing is this. He's been in Minnesota 7 years. Hasn't even played in a Big Ten championship. I mean, if you're not first, you're last. And at his point, he ain't even second. He ain't even third. I mean, where are you on the list? Are you even in the conference at this point? Like, what are you fighting for? Why does the team get dressed every day? To go out there and finish 5th? Hey, guys, we looked kind of good this year. Woohoo!
Well, as much as
he's going to be handing out his sprinkles real quick this year.
as much as I would like to continue talking about Minnesota here, TSul, I really could care less how they finish. I'm just telling you
Doesn't
that PJ
sound
Fleck
like
is.
that.
All I said was he's similar to Kirk Ferentz. Both of them are
Well-
mediocre coaches.
You're saying, so hold on, BSul, listen here. You're saying that PJ Fleck has a winning record at Minnesota, but that's such a small thing because we know that Minnesota doesn't ever schedule anybody out of conference. I mean, they play 3 cupcakes. It used to be 4 cupcakes. You don't ever see Minnesota go schedule Alabama or LSU or Texas or something like that. I mean, you're lucky if they're playing Boston College at this point. So when I look at their PJ Fleck's conference record, he's got to lose a record. He's 29-32. He's below 500. What does that make you reconsider your position?
Okay, so let's, TSul, just for comparisons here. let me do some quick math here. We're at 7 years. Is that what we decided?
And I don't know why, but Chazzy, this is your fault that we're debating this. I don't know why, but it's your fault.
Hey, don't drag me into this. You guys threw the anchor out and forgot to tie the rope. Just keep sinking.
BSul's doing his quick calculations and panicking because he didn't realize PJ Fleck was that bad in conference. From the Big Ten that hasn't been that great. I mean, to be honest, if it's not Ohio State or Michigan the last 3 years, the conference has been pretty terrible. And we know that Minnesota ain't playing Ohio State every year.
I just can't believe we got caught up in this. This is what the podcast has come to. Debating Iowa, Minnesota coaches in the past.
Because, Chazzy, it just comes to a point where you call for a guy to be fired. You land the biggest upset of the season in Northwestern beating Minnesota, and then Minnesota just holds their tongue and doesn't fire this guy. I mean, what else do you have to do to fire a coach?
TSul, I think that's the whole point here. They already arguably had the worst season, and he's still their coach. So what do you think he could do that possibly get him fired this year?
It can't get worse.
That didn't happen last year.
And when you look at it here,
it can't get worse.
So TSul, let's just admire this fact, right? So in his first 7 years, Kirk Ferentz went 32-24 in conference play.
That's light years better than PJ.
Okay. So do you want to hear the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9? Let's go 9. That puts him to 2015, right? Okay. So let me add this up for you here.
I got a slight guess coming in from the crowd that he's going to be just above 500 if we only had 2 years. Just enough to be in BSul's favor.
That's right. We're going to skip these 2 years right here in the middle.
Spoken like a true Sul. Never a dull moment that they're always winning.
Any team wearing blue doesn't count again for this record.
So his first 7 years, I told you, was 32-24, right?
Right.
So you think you're on the up and up. He then, in conference play, the next 8 years goes 36-36.
That's still better than PJ. You haven't found anything that says that he's had a losing record.
TSul, what I'm telling you here is the guy has floated right around 500 for his entire career in the conference. Then all of a sudden, he gets hot a couple years. When they split it into the East and West, and Iowa beats up because on some bad teams, and all of a sudden everybody's like, oh man, Kirk Ferentz is very good. He's such a good coach. He's trash. PJ Fleck is trash. You are comparing apples to oranges here. And all I'm telling you is Minnesota found their Kirk Ferentz. They found a quarterback or a coach who is mediocre, who is just good enough that you're like, hey, people are still talking about us. We're somewhat competitive. We're good.
Well, BSul, if we're comparing apples and oranges, okay, we know it's not fresh fruit, okay? The Kirk Ferentz apple, you look at it and you go, can still eat it. The PJ Fleck one, I mean, that's rotting. It's got bugs flying in and out of it. It's got brown spots. You can't even tell if it's an orange or an apple at this point.
I would go on a limb here, TSul, and I would tell you that if PJ Fleck gets as many years as Kurt Ferentz does, and you go back and compare their career records
The Minnesota
at their
fans
Big
are
Ten schools,
blowing their brains out.
and you compare their records, PJ Fleck will have about the same winning percentage. And I'll say, give me 3%. They will have the same winning percentage if you give him 20 years at a school.
So you're expecting then, if he were to stay at Minnesota, PJ Fleck would just magically start winning more games?
He only has to win a few more to get as good as Kurt Ferentz.
As the conference is getting harder.
Again, the conference is very top heavy. That all they have to do is do what Iowa's done the last couple years and have the Big Ten schedule all of the bad teams for you to boost your winning percentage. And guess what? The conference is going to do that because when Minnesota has to play Ohio State and Michigan, they don't want them coming in with one conference win and everybody goes, oh man, Ohio State's going to blow them out. They want Minnesota strolling in with 6 conference wins and then Ohio State just steamrolling them. That way Ohio State can say, hey guys, we beat Minnesota. They were so good.
And we all put our paper hats down.
I don't even know what you're talking about, paper hats. But Chazzy,
Yeah, I'm lost.
I'm so done with Minnesota talk and Iowa talk. I don't even like either team. Let's just get to it here. We left you off. You're 5-0. Do you got the Huskers being bowl eligible against Rutgers coming to town?
I don't even think you have to ask me that question because there isn't anybody on this podcast that would have us losing to Rutgers.
I
And
wasn't
if
sure.
they do-
You're a big Greg Schiano fan, so
And I don't even know who that is, nor do I care, because we are going to steamroll right past them. That it really all we're going to be leaving is dust.
So you got us beating Rutgers. Next week, we're on the road at Indiana. What do you think?
Well, I think the entire state of Indiana, after we went in and whoop Purdue, is already crying wolf that the Red Sea, the official Red Sea, not their BS color red they got going on down there, is actually coming to town. And we're walking out with another dub.
You hear that, TSul? Even Chazzy knows that's a fake trap game there.
The reason why it's a trap game is because we got Ohio State the following week. And also, I'm not picking the Huskers to go undefeated and win the playoff.
We're so scared. Indiana's
We might as
gonna
well
be able to
just
score
mark it
3
an L on the
points.
calendar now. Just mark it an L for the season. Don't even prep for that game because who cares? We know we ain't going to beat them. I just hope we make it respectable this year.
Hold on, Chazzy.
Hold
because TSul has that as a win.
Oh my gosh. Okay, what do you so we got JSul going 6-6, and we got TSul over here going. I don't even know what your final record is, but you have us beating Ohio State, which we have yet to do as far as I'm concerned.
Now let's just go back to my favorite part about this. TSul has us losing to Indiana and then beating Ohio State.
It's unpredictability, baby. And let me tell you something here, Chazzy. The reason why that, number one, okay, BSul was talking about how Kirk Ferentz never accomplished anything at Iowa. He's mediocre at best. That's Ryan Day at Ohio State. The guy inherits one of the best programs in the country, set up to succeed right away, and he hasn't done anything with it. I mean, how much longer can you wait at Ohio State? Because they do great on championships.
I would maybe, just maybe be on your side for a little bit of roulade to drop out of my cup if this game was in Lincoln. But I know that still doesn't change the game because we've gotten smoked by them home, away. It doesn't matter who their coach is. Ryan Day could be out on leave that game and we'd still lose.
I believe the last Ohio State coach we beat was Luke Fickell, who's now the Wisconsin head coach.
And that says enough as it is.
Now, Chazzy, did you even look at Ohio State's schedule? Because did you notice that we're sandwiched in between their road game to Oregon and their road game to Penn State?
And you mean to tell me that they're going to overlook a 7-0 team, a 6-1 team?
They're gonna look
Hold
at
on.
a 6-1 Nebraska
Let-
team and then go, the last 6 years, we're
No.
more focused on Penn State at this point.
It would be
No,
different
no,
if we
no.
were
Smack 'em right in the lip.
TSul, if we were 3-0, sandwiched between two games for them, and it was the beginning of the season, and they were like, well, they haven't played anybody yet. They could look at it and say, hey, you're 7-0, but you haven't played anybody. You're still 7-0. At a certain point, when you get enough wins, you're no longer overlooked.
I picked the 6-1 there, BSul. So when you lose
Yeah,
to Indiana,
okay.
yes, they're
Ooh.
crossing you off their list. And that's when we smack them in the lip, and there's no stopping
Time out.
Dylan King Raiola at that point.
Time out with your guys' shenanigans with records. I don't even care what our record is. Let's just go back. Let's just back up a couple paces here. What's our road games before we go in there with a freshman quarterback? Oh, Purdue. Ooh, going on the road to Purdue. Ooh. And then we go on the road to Indiana. Wow, we haven't left the state, and we're only playing 2 road games in the same state. And then you're going to tell me that this freshman quarterback's just going to be not bedazzled when he walks into the Ohio State for his official first road Big Ten game. And I say official because the other 2 games aren't even going to matter this year.
Well, Chaz,
That's going to make a difference. That's going to make a difference.
That Dylan Raiola is a road dog. He feeds off the energy, and he's going to light them up.
TSul, is that why
I don't
you've
even
got,
want to know where you got that from.
Is that why you've got 2 of his 3 losses this season coming on the road? That road dog?
Well, BSul, he only does it to road crowds, and unfortunately, Indiana just doesn't have a crowd to light him up, to excite him.
What about Iowa?
They got the refs on their side, so what do you expect, It's going to be Kirk Ferentz's last season. He's going to retire, and so they're going to be like, well, the best way to push, the most mediocre coach out, in retirement is to push him to the Big Ten championship so they can get beat down by 50 points and he'll retire.
There's no way Iowa makes the Big Ten championship game. No way.
Not a chance. Not with the new Big Ten.
They're not winning the West.
But
they have to be a top 2 team in the Big Ten.
But everybody, Scoopers here. I was having a casual conversation with BSul before we started filming. Chazzy was there for it, and BSul ran through Iowa's schedule, looked at me on camera, and said, "There is no possible way this team is going to lose more than 2 games." And so,
we don't know what he's talking about.
BSul,
There's no proof of that.
Because of that, BSul,
I picked them 9-3.
But one of the games was a loss out of conference. You said they're going to lose to Iowa State, and that doesn't affect their Big Ten record. BSul.
So TSul, just hear me out here, because I want to see how a 2-loss Big Ten team makes it to the championship game. Because I'm gonna riddle you this. I just hear me out, right? The Big Ten championship game that I picked has an undefeated team and a 1-loss team.
That's because you're smoking your crack pipe.
Certainly not. I'm telling you right now, 2 losses and you're done. 1 loss is a stretch.
I don't think so. I really don't. I don't think the Big Ten is
really. The Big Ten conference is so top heavy, and those teams don't really play each other. You're talking a 1-loss or a no-loss team competing for the championship game.
BSul, I personally think the Big Ten is up for grabs this year. The fact that Harbaugh left with his cheating antics, and Michigan lost half their lineup. Michigan's not the top dog anymore. If anything, they're just a puppy barking in the background because their team's passed. It's gone. Their best years are behind them. It's up for grabs. So Ohio State hasn't proved anything in the last 3 to 4 years. The only team that I would say you have to watch out for at this point is Penn State, because Penn State's the only proven team at this point.
So let's just pause for a second here. Iowa's best player got drafted, right? Their punter's gone. They can't flip the field now. And you mean to tell me that this team that averaged 3 points on offense all season is going to turn around and make the Big Ten championship game being one of the top 2 teams just because it's up for grabs. Ooh, what's their average points per game going to go to? 5? They aren't going to make it.
Well,
I'm telling you, based on their schedule, they don't need the points. They only need points for one game, probably. I mean, when you look at this, they play, we skip past their out of conference, but just so everyone knows, it's Illinois State, Iowa State, and Troy. They're not playing any juggernauts there, okay? Then they go on the road to Minnesota. You all know how I feel about PJ Fleck in Minnesota, so that's a dub. Then they go on the road to Ohio State. You can mark that as an L if it makes you feel there, if it makes you feel good there, BSul. Then they got Washington at home. And now it's not Washington of last year. Washington lost everybody, including their coach, their AD. They lost freaking everybody. I'm not buying in on Washington coming on the road and beating Iowa at home. Iowa's tough to beat at home. I don't buy it. Then they go on the road to Michigan State. Michigan State sucks. All right. If it's not Purdue or Minnesota, it's Michigan State who's leading the conference in losses. Then they got Northwestern coming into town. Northwestern, that's a solid team. That's a coin flip I would give you, but they should still be better than Northwestern. Then they got Wisconsin. Wisconsin sucks. I mean, let's put it that way. Wisconsin ain't making any noise. Then they go on the road to UCLA, as BSul said, is an embarrassment of a program for the new programs coming in. They're not going to lose that game. Then they go on the road to Maryland. I think Maryland's fighting for 6 wins at this point. And then they got Nebraska at home, and that's another coin flip. So there you go, Scoopers. That's how Iowa gets it done, not because they're a fantastic program, but because they got an easy-ass schedule.
Okay. So TSul, again, even if you go with the 2 Big Ten losses that I gave them, 3 on the entire season, right? Let's run through here. Let me give you the 2 teams that are going to be in the Big Ten championship game, and you feel me out, okay?
He's got Michigan State and Indiana.
Ooh, that's exactly it. So let's start with Ohio State, right? Ohio State's going to run through their season. They're going to have 1 loss this year. It's going to be at Oregon.
How do you
1 loss?
So you're just guaranteeing. I mean, they got a way tougher schedule than Iowa. Would you agree with that statement?
I would say it's probably on par with Iowa.
I don't remember Iowa having to play Michigan. So,
Okay. Didn't you just say the Big Ten's up for grabs because Jim Harbaugh and the cheating Michigan Wolverines aren't going to be the same? So I don't really understand
how. It's still a rivalry game. It's still a rivalry game.
So is Iowa State. What's the point?
Here we go.
So let's go through it.
I don't recall Iowa having to play Oregon on their schedule.
So you've got Ohio State with 1 loss, right? That's where I'm at there.
I got more than 1 loss for Ohio State.
So then you run through Penn State. I'm willing to give Penn State 2 losses in the Big Ten at USC and versus Ohio State. That's their 2 losses. So Penn State
really
is already.
Penn State's going to lose to USC.
I'm telling you, that is the only other game that Penn State stands a chance at losing. Scoopers. The only 2 games that they've got a shot at losing are those 2 games. Okay. So let's not
forget his reason why they're going to lose to USC, because of the long flight.
Yeah, it's a long travel day there for them. And the Big Ten's probably going to screw them with a real late game where the kids are going to be out of their element. So it would not surprise me if Penn State loses that game.
If they're complaining about a long flight, then I hope that none of these kids at Penn State plan on playing in the NFL. So at this point. They've got a long flight every week.
Oh my gosh.
Hopefully they don't play in London.
Ohio State, 1 loss. Penn State, I'm giving 2 losses there at the tops. And okay, let's say Penn State does beat USC. They're at 1 loss. That's already 2 teams with 1 loss in the Big Ten above Iowa.
Penn State's going to beat Ohio State.
Ooh, okay. Then you've got Oregon, who isn't going to lose a game in the regular season.
You just said that they were going to beat Ohio State.
Yeah, Oregon's going to beat Ohio State. Thanks for doing the math there for me. Oregon's not going to have a loss in the regular season.
Wow. Chazzy, do you see that mapping out for Oregon that easy?
Well,
are you willing to bet your house on it?
I don't want to, get ahead on my predictions for the Big Ten championship, but it may be a little swindle to them Ducks up out west.
So, TSul, before we get ahead of ourselves in crowning this Kirk Ferentz team to be the be all end all of the Big Ten, let's get back to Chazzy's picks. Chazzy, UCLA coming to Lincoln. You've got the Huskers losing to Ohio State. How you got this game going?
Uh, you know, I think a tough loss to Ohio State. I say a tough loss because I'm really hoping we actually make it look like we belong on the same field as them this year. I think we'll still fall short, but I don't think it's going to be a blowout. And then I think we turn around and you know, we're going to pail some, get some water out of our ship here, pour some more Roulade on, and get a dub right back with UCLA at home.
So, Scoopers, at this point in the season, Chazzy has us 8-1 with 3 games to go. The question becomes, you got the Huskers winning out here? You got an 11-1 Husker team here, Chazzy?
He's got.
Do you have the Huskers in the Big Ten championship game with 1 loss? That would be above TSul's 2-loss Iowa team. But I'm sorry, I don't want to jump ahead too much. Let's start on the road at USC.
Yeah, I mean, I think BSul's getting ahead of himself. I do normally say every year that I'm going to be, the realistic person, but we've thrown that out the door because we know that just never happens. We gotta make sure the Scoopers don't ever want to kick me off my guest appearances on this podcast. So, but I do have us losing on the road at USC.
All right. So apparently Chazzy does not have Dylan Raiola as that road dog like TSul. How do you got us faring with Wisconsin coming to town?
Well, in the words of TSul, it's the only game that matters. And thank God I don't believe the same way TSul does, because if that was the case, we'd have a new coach every year. I do have us losing to Wisconsin because at this point, I can't even predict us to beat them until they show me that they can. And every year I just, dwindle my head because I know that the other parts of the fam come that week talk so much crap. And I'm just, I can't get behind it until we beat them. Then we could finally, open up the can of worms. But right now, prove me wrong. That's what I'm telling you. Prove me wrong.
Well, that 8-1 seems like a long time ago there, Chazzy. You got us 8-3, finishing the season on the road against Iowa in Iowa City against TSul's future Big Ten champs.
No, I did not pick them to win the Big Ten.
Well, we really don't care what TSul says. I think we're marching into Iowa. We're coming out with a dub. I think it's about time we claim that trophy back. And you know what? For all their fans out there, our corn's better than yours.
Yes, it is. And TSul, I would like to just point out here, Chazzy made a comment earlier in the episode that he rides with BSul from start to finish. Chazzy, we got the same picks down the season here. 9-3, every win, every loss. I like it.
BSul,
Hey.
I thought you picked them to go 11-1. Did you or did you not?
I did not TSul, and anybody who likes to point out that TSul was lying, please tune into last week's episode.
So who were your losses? You picked Ohio State, and who else?
USC and Wisconsin.
Well, great minds think alike. And if I was getting really racked up that I had us going 8-4 last year, and you guys told me my picks did really well, then I think 9-3 this year couldn't be any better.
Now,
I also have
Chazzy,
them 9-3.
yeah, with all different losses. Let's just point that out there.
Hey,
Let
Now,
me tell you, if TSul's losses are happening, we are not going 9-3.
No, not at all. Not if you lose to Indiana.
We're going to be closer to 6-6 with JSul. And Chazzy does not like agreeing with JSul ever. So if we're losing to Indiana, we might as well just say we're going to be closer to 6-6 than 9-3.
Now, Chazzy, we got to ask the next thing here. We got into it a little bit. Who is your Big Ten championship game, and who do you have coming out on top?
Well, speaking from the arch rivalry you guys have been bashing through this entire podcast, I hate to say it, but I think I meet both of you right in the middle. I have Penn State solely because I think schedule-wise, Penn State has a pretty well-rounded cakewalk minus maybe one game. And from hearing from both of you, you have the only other team that I have them playing in the Big Ten championship being a loss. So I also have Oregon making it to the Big Ten championship to play Penn State. And I think where I get you both totally out of whack is that I have Oregon coming in and winning the Big Ten in their first season.
Now, Chazzy, I would like to say to a certain extent, you're riding with me again. I've got Oregon winning the Big Ten in their opening season with us, except I have them doing it in a rematch with Ohio State and beating them for a second time.
And Chaz, you may as well just save yourself the season and just drive off the cliff now, because that's where you guys are heading with that pick.
You know what? If the Cincinnati Bearcats let me and BSul ride or die, I'm willing to do it with Oregon any other day of the week.
But you only jump back to Cincinnati, and you seem to forget all about that Cougar caboose.
Well, hold on here. I did not jump.
That was a JSul
caboose.
thing. That was a JSul thing.
I did not part the sea on that ship because that thing, like the Titanic, sunk before it even left port.
Who was the other pick then? You rode with them off the cliff on a different pick then. Who was in between Cincinnati and the Cougar caboose?
I can't
TSul,
recall.
you're forgetting that.
No, that
JSul had
moment
Tulane last year.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, our last ride was probably I think it was TCU.
Oh no way! You're not giving yourself props for that.
I honestly
your
don't.
Your last ride might have been Colorado.
No. Who was our last
All I know is your
It might
last
have
ride
been, honestly, it might have been,
before it even got
no,
there.
I think it was USC. I think it was Caleb Williams. I think it was Caleb Williams at USC. I truly do.
And we all saw how that worked out for him.
Because I think that's who me.
Last year you picked USC to be the only undefeated team in college football. And how did that work out for you?
I didn't pick them the year before like that idiot Chazzy.
Now, Chazzy, let's get down to the most important part here. You got the Huskers 9-3. You have a miss in the Big Ten championship game. Who do you have at the end of the season as our top offensive player for the Huskers?
Well, I think I speak for not only all of the loyal scoopers out there, all of us. And you know what? At this point, we might as well just say the whole darn state of Nebraska. We have our golden boy, our lucky charm. I don't care if he's a freshman. I still think he's leading the pack. Dylan Raiola's got to be the offensive player of the year. If he's not, then pour my roulade out because I want a fresh cup if that's not the case. We've invested too much. I see BSul going to town right there. He's got his jersey ready. The last thing we need is to see him burning that jersey.
It'll take a lot to get me to that point, Chazzy. I think you're right. So far, the three of us, TSul, JSul, and I all have Raiola as well. I think it's going to be a clean sweep from everybody's predictions this year that he will be the offensive player. Defensive-wise, though, that's going to be a little bit of a split decision, I think, going across the board. Who do you have as the top defensive player for the Huskers at the end of the year?
Well, you know me. I love trench warfare. And I think we finally got our big man in the middle that's just been taking people to town. And, I mean, he's one heck of a wrestler. I can't imagine why he doesn't just continue to just be a dog on the gridiron. I mean, I like Nash. I like Whitmacher. I think he's the guy. And for getting so much hype for Ty Robinson for the last couple of years, this guy comes in and looks like he's been playing football for a lot longer. And we know that's not the case. But, I mean, when you got to take two O linemen and take one guy out, I don't know how you can't say that that's the base of your defense. I mean, that's huge,
Now,
especially the Big Ten.
I will say with the polar bear there, I think it's a solid pick. That's what JSul and TSul both had as well. Polar bear coming back this season should have a good turnout. Hopefully he's as productive as he was last year. You guys got to remember, last year he had 7 sacks as an interior D lineman. That's huge. And a lot of people probably remember Sue's senior year back when it was huge. But as a junior, Sue put up 7.5 sacks, which is right where the polar bear was his junior year. So I'm not trying to draw comparisons between the two of them, but if he put in work this offseason, we know he did. He was wrestling for the university. If he comes out and can be half as productive as he was last year, or half as productive as Sue was his senior year, I think we're in for a nice surprise there.
And
Well,
BSul, I saw something today that Nash he's coming back as the leading sack guy for all defensive linemen in the Big Ten. So no defensive lineman in the Big Ten had more than 7 sacks last year. And I am not going to relate him to Sue because I just don't. I mean,
It's
Sue,
not fair.
yeah, no, it's not because Sue did so much more than just his 7 sacks. I mean, he was getting interceptions. He was in on every play, hitting the. I mean, people were running screen passes just the opposite side just to get away from him. So Sue's Hall of Fame. Nash might be Nebraska Hall of Fame, but he's probably not going to be college football Hall of Fame. I think relating him more to Crick is more relatable because Crick was still a freaking monster for us. Still had a solid NFL career. That's what I see Nash as. Maybe a little bit better than Crick, but I don't see him getting anywhere near Sue. I mean, I don't think we'll ever see another player on Nebraska quite the way like Sue.
Well, thanks for joining us for another week of the Sully Scoop. You're here with
Hey,
BSul.
he didn't pick. Oh yeah, he did. Sorry, my bad. I forgot he picked his Big Ten teams. Sleeping over here.
TSul's running on empty here, folks, but don't worry. Next week, JSul will be back to put TSul in his place. And let's just thank you all for coming on and listening. Don't forget to go to thesullyscoop.com. Check out our website. We've got links to all of our social media pages where you can listen to the podcast, where you can interact with us. We've got on the website as well the Grandstand Gossip page. You can leave comments to be on the Grandstand Gossip. That'll start back up as we get closer to the kickoff of the 2024 season. Thanks again for listening. You're here with BSul, TSul, and special guest Chazzy.
thanks for having me on again, fellas.
Thanks for coming on, Chazzy.
Thanks for coming, man. Go Big Red.